Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for this live farm tour today. We're going to get started here shortly. Well, good morning again. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Towell, and I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at Duda Farm Fresh Foods. Thrilled to welcome you today to our romaine field that we have in Hollister, California. Duda Farm Fresh Foods is a sixth-generation family-owned company with a broad range of products, all sold under the Dandy brand, making us a single solution for fresh produce. Our regional growing programs enable year-round availability of a wide range of products, and through an extensive alliance of grower partners, both nationally and internationally, Duda Farm Fresh Foods is a trusted single-source supplier of fresh produce. Dandy offers a full line of sleeved lettuce products, which are on trend with today's consumer demands. We like to say that freshness is in the bag, and it's protected from our field to your shelves in our branded packaging. We invite everyone to use the question and answer function in the Zoom meeting, and you can send us your questions. We will answer them live at the end. We are delighted to have part of our operations team with us today to give us that up-close tour of our romaine field in Hollister, which is considered part of the Salinas, California growing region. I would like to introduce Brad Stinson, Quality Control Field Supervisor and a fifth-generation Duda family member, Oscar Rodriguez, Quality Control Field Supervisor, and also Javier Valdez, the Leaf Harvesting Manager. Brad, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks, Nicole. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Brad Stinson. I'm a quality control field supervisor here on the West Coast. Oscar Rodriguez is behind the camera, and Javier Valdez is over here cutting some heads for a demonstration that will be coming up here in a few minutes. So my job today is to take you all through the process of growing this beautiful romaine lettuce we have here in Hollister, California. So obviously this is a finished product. We have an actual harvesting machine right behind us that was harvesting earlier today. So this stuff is ready for harvest. Now, I'm going to take you through the very beginning. Obviously, these plants do not start out looking the way they are. We choose to plant these directly from seed as opposed to transplanting. There are other companies around that choose to transplant their romaine. For the purposes of our program, we've chosen to just do a direct seed planting. And when I say direct seed, keep in mind that it's not the seed that you would go buy in the home and garden section of Lowe's or Home Depot. These seeds are coated in a special blend of vitamins and nutrients that help that seed germinate once it's activated with water. And so as you can see here, we are standing in a bed of 5-line romaine. And so whenever this is planted directly from seed, we have a tractor come through with a specialized apparatus behind it that will drop the seed. It will open up 5 lines in the bed, very narrow trenches. It will drop the seed in, and then it will cover up the bed behind it, and that's called the sowing process. So after that happens, the field has been sown. Not long after that, some irrigators will come in with the sprinkler pipe like you can see behind me, and they will turn on the sprinklers and they will try to get that seed to germinate. Now, the reason we use sprinklers right off the bat is because sprinklers give a very good aerial coverage of these beds. And so you want an aerial coverage to start out because you want that water to get directly on the top of the bed and percolate straight down, so that way it maximizes the chance of making contact with that seed and allowing it to germinate, although that seed is only a couple inches buried under the ground. So it takes a decent amount of water to do that. However, we choose to use sprinkler irrigation here in California because, of course, water restrictions can be tight at times, and this has been proven to be a very efficient way to get those seeds to pop the surface of the ground and start to sprout leaves. So Once that happens, it could take up to a few days, depending on the weather. It could take up to a week for those seeds to break the surface of the ground and start to show their foliage. The sprinklers will continue to be used, and a couple weeks after they germinate and you can start to see the results of the plants, we bring in what's called a thinning apparatus. And so there are two different ways that the bulk of the industry chooses to go about the thinning process. One of them is to bring in a crew of people that have really just a gardening hoe, but it's made in a special way, and has a particular diameter on the blade of the hoe. And by doing so, it allows them to take any plants in between the edges of their blade, and it basically just kind of flips them out, and it allows the plants that are left to grow up and out to maximize their growth and hopefully their quality as well. Otherwise, if you have multiple plants in that 9-inch average blade length of the hoe, they are going to grow and they're going to push against each other, and they're not going to grow up and out to become the romaine that you and I are accustomed to. So by doing that, it allows the plants that are left in the ground to maximize their growth. Now, that is the process that the crew of people use. The other process that I mentioned, the automated thinner, that is a very sophisticated computer and mechanical apparatus that attaches to the back of a tractor. And it essentially uses a very smart computer, some laser mechanisms that detect anomalies in the soil, which are the plants, and either a pressurized air hose or mechanical knives about the same width as the blades of the hose that the crew people use. And it can automatically detect any plants that are between the gaps, so to speak, of the plants that we would like to keep. And so by doing that, it will either use that pressurized air or that little blade to kick out or blow out the undesirable plants. And the plants that are left are the ones you see right behind me here. So like I said, that takes place about 2 weeks or so after the germination process. And after that, we just allow the plants to do their thing. We will continue to water them and monitor their health and quality through using different methods. And once it's ready to harvest, then we will bring in a harvesting crew and let them do their jobs. Now, on average, it can take about 65 days or so, give or take, for a romaine plant to go from seed to the size that you see before you here, where it's ready to be harvested. That can vary depending on the region that it's being grown in, any weather anomalies that are taking place at the time, and also the time of the year. So for example, Nicole mentioned that we are here in Hollister, which is part of the Salinas region as a whole. However, Hollister will get a little bit warmer on average than Salinas, which is just over those mountains. So when that's the case, the heat will spur the plants to grow a little bit faster. And also, since we are in the summertime for the growing season throughout the year, the days are getting longer, which is allowing more sunlight to give the plants the ability to photosynthesize longer, and that allows them to grow as well. So with those factors coming into play, that 65-day average can actually be whittled down to 60 days or even under 60 days, sometimes 55 days or less, depending on if there are any abnormal heat events during the time that may have activated the plants to hit a little bit of a growth spurt for a couple days at a time. So that is something that we are always trying to stay on top of during this time of the year. Again, you know, we have to be very vigilant and keeping track of that, because the plants don't stop growing for anybody or anything. So we have to always be mindful and aware of how the plant's health is and also where it is at its growth stage. So that is the Salinas region, and we would be here dealing with those types of growth patterns from roughly the beginning of April until the end of October. And in the wintertime, we transition to Yuma, Arizona. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, if a heat event in beautiful sunny Salinas could cause romaine to grow faster than normal, surely the famous heat that we all know Yuma to have would cause the plants to grow in a record amount of time. That's not always the case in the wintertime there. The climate in the wintertime in Yuma is very, very mild, with the average daytime temperatures being about 70 to 75 degrees, nighttime temps being on average in the mid 40s, and also incurring some freezes along the way, which could not stunt the growth of the plants, but certainly stall it. So whenever a freeze happens in Yuma, for example, the ground itself could get cold enough to where the plant shuts down and becomes dormant, almost like a hibernation phase, as well as the frost can hit the plant itself, and that can cause it to kind of go to sleep or hibernate as well. So that's something that we are battling all the time in Yuma. However, whenever we transition to Yuma, it's the winter time. There's less sunlight. It's colder temperatures on average, and you have the possibility of freezes. So that average amount of time that it takes the plant to be ready for harvest, that 65-day average, can expand to 70, 75. There's been many times where it can go 80 plus days before it's ready to harvest. And it doesn't mean that the plant has gotten too old. It just means that it's basically in some kind of stasis or hibernation where it's not doing anything. It's just waiting for those right conditions again to activate it to grow. And once that happens, then the process will begin as normal. So that's one of the main differences between here, this region, and the Yuma region. The other main difference is the use of water. So as I mentioned before, California is very strict on their water use, and rightfully so. So in doing that, the farmers around here are conditioned to use either sprinklers or drip tape. We chose to use sprinklers in this field, but drip tape is something, it's just a plastic kind of a hose that runs in between these individual lines, and they have little near microscopic holes that will kind of bubble water out of it, and it will water the plants that way. It's a very efficient use of water, and it can be very fine-tuned to make sure that you are not overusing or underusing the water, and also making sure that the plant is in the best health possible. Sprinklers, kind of the same thing. In Yuma, because the Colorado River runs through the heart of the city, throughout the decades, the town of Yuma has been able to build a very, very complex canal system that reaches far past the outskirts of town. And by allowing that fresh river water to come to virtually any field in the area, you are able to get fresh water. And also the method of applying that water is different. In Yuma, the furrows or the ditches between the beds of the product is a little deeper. It's a little bit more of a trench like this, like a valley. And so that allows it to hold more water. And so whenever that happens, and say if this field was in Yuma and we wanted it to be harvested, or watered, I should say, before harvest, then we would make a call. The water would snake its way through the canals, make it to the canal that ends at this field. We would open up a gate, and the water would flow in between the beds in the furrows, and it would essentially raise the water table by doing it that way. And so whenever that happens, it ensures that there is plenty of water to be had for all the plants, and it will penetrate the sides of the beds, and through the surface tension of the water meeting the soil, it will make its way to the middle and go up where all of the roots can absorb that, even the plants in the middle of the bed. Now, that is also used in Yuma because the soil there has a very high salt content, much higher than many other places that we choose to grow. So by doing that and allowing a rush of water onto the soil, it activates those salts and allows them to dissolve in the water. And by doing that, it makes sure that after the water is taken off the field, if you say, for instance, if you water a field in Yuma and you don't put enough water on to do that, all it does is bring the salts to the surface of the bed, and it will literally dry out and choke the plants to death, and it will kill them. So you want to make sure that you almost have too much water in Yuma to make sure that the saltiness in the soil doesn't overtake your crop. Now, also in the wintertime, we not only grow on the West Coast, we also have a wintertime season in Belglade, Florida, where we grow all the commodities that we have available, plus a couple extra. We also do corn and radishes in Florida in the wintertime as well. So while we have the ability to transition our West Coast program to make it a 365-day-a-year program, we also have the ability to transition that program, the need of that program, or the supply, I should say, between East and West Coast, which allows us a lot of versatility. So all that being said, the watering, the thinning, the germinating, that gets you to the finished product, which you have behind me here. And Javier has been diligently supplying some heads for us to use as an example. Now, Javier is going to start by packing this romaine, and I should mention that this is not our normal operating procedure. Once the romaine, or any crop for that matter, is cut, it never touches the ground. This is purely a demonstration. So, as you can see, Javier is laying all of the heads in the same direction, and this allows you to kind of tier it on top of each other, like you can see here. He kind of put it a little bit overlapping, and he will do the same thing again on one more row. There you go. And so now he is kind of crisscrossed it, and that allows the heads that will be laid on top of it to be a little bit more flat. And so if you look at a head of romaine, you can see it's kind of a cone shape almost. It kind of goes up and out. So if you were to lay all the heads in the box same direction, it's really going to stack up on you. But if you alternate them, it becomes flat. And so that's what we try to do here. And by doing that, it ensures that there's less mechanical damage during the time of packing, and it's just a prettier look as well. And so this will be a finished box. Typically, we would put a liner in this box to make sure that any moisture on the heads of romaine would not dissolve the cardboard in the box. We did not have a liner available for this demonstration, so we just had to make do with what we had. So as you can see, this is some really healthy romaine, definitely the right size. If anything, it may be a little too big, but that's okay for this demonstration. And so, you know, in theory, after this is done, the packer would close this up and pack it, and that would be it. They would put it on the machine. So it's okay, Javi. If you want, Javier, could you show everyone watching how somebody would harvest a particular head of romaine? Okay, so as you can see here, he takes his knife and he cuts the plant just above the base where it's penetrating the soil. And after that, he will take his knife and kind of trim off any excess leaves, maybe some of the yellow or withering leaves that could affect the quality or the look of the plant. And so by doing that, you end up getting a really good looking head, and it's ready for the store. So now if you would come over to the machine, we will show you how we do our flip top romaine pack. And this is important, especially now with all the COVID-19 things going on. This does not guarantee that no one has touched your particular head of romaine that you're buying at the store, but it certainly makes it less likely that anyone has. So, Javier, if you will. As you can see, he puts the main rib, this is called the rib of a leaf, facing the front of the logo. And that just ensures that it's packed properly and it looks nice. And then he will flip the top over. And there you go. That's a piece of flip top romaine. Doesn't get any better looking than that. So this is the process. Now, typically, of course, we would have people doing this on this machine. they have already gone home for the day. They finished their hard work. Now these machines are properly cleaned with chlorinated water every day after harvest. So there's maximum effort to ensure that there's no micro contaminants affecting the quality of this plant. And that's something that we really try to adhere to here at Duda. We always try to take the extra step to ensure human safety and food safety. So that's about it. I've kind of walked you through the start to finish of growing romaine and harvesting romaine. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to hear them.
Hi, Brad. There are questions. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
What food safety, you touched on it a little bit there at the end. What food safety is done in the field, and when are the traceability stickers applied?
Okay, great questions. There's a lot of different things that are done for food safety in the field. Right now, specifically with the COVID-19 stuff going on, every crew member is wearing some type of mask. It may be a bandana, it could be an actual surgical mask, but every crew member is wearing masks right now, and typically they wear that anyways. That's our typical operating procedures, as well as hairnets and gloves. Now, that is normal, but with the COVID-19 thing, every time that they step in and out of the field, they have to sanitize their hands. They gotta take their gloves off, sanitize their hands, and before they go back into the field, if it was a bathroom break or lunch break, they have to sanitize again. So they are ensuring that everything is being done possible to keep them as clean as possible, and trying not to secondhand affect any of these plants. On top of that, these hoses that you see behind me here, this one's not on, that's okay. That all has chlorinated water. And the point of the chlorine is it essentially wipes out most microbial agents that can cause any kind of problems. It doesn't do all of it because the concentration of the chlorine is fairly low. We have a certain threshold that we have to adhere to by law. Otherwise, you know, you could put pool water on it. It would probably kill everything, but it would taste terrible. So we have to be mindful of the amount of chlorine, the parts per million that we have in the water. But by doing so, we give it one last spritz before we put it in the box. And it's just kind of our last effort to make sure that everything that is microscopically sticking to this plant that could harm somebody is no longer going to harm them. So you mentioned the pack date stickers. Those are put on at the time of harvest. So the individual people that are up here on the machine packing, they will put the flip top on like you saw Javier do. And then you would see them, they have a little sticker gun right next to them, and they're just peeling them off, and they're just putting them on each bag, and they then put them in the box.
Great. So another question, do you harvest field pack or flip top first? Or is there a way that's done in the field, harvested first or last?
That's a good question. There are a few different factors for that. I probably should have included, we don't just have this one crew. So if you're thinking that it's the one crew, it would make a little more sense that the field pack would come first or the flip top would come first. We have two romaine crews that pack this kind of romaine. We have a couple of different romaine hearts crews and a mixed leaf crew as well. So between the two romaine crews, Javier will split up the orders equally, and typically we will get any special packs done first for any specialty customers that we have contracts with, just to ensure that they get the freshest, well, I shouldn't say the freshest. They get the first crack at it because they're paying the top dollar. And then after that, it just depends on the day. It depends on the orders and how much time the crew has to pack. Some days we may only pack liner. Some days we may only pack flip top. It really just depends on the sales orders.
Okay. And another great question. what is the difference between romaine and romaine hearts?
That is a good question. Okay, so here, I'll use this example. Romaine, as you see here, this is the normal size. Okay, this is considered a 24 size romaine. Let me pull my knife out here. Try not to screw this up. Romaine heart would be where you trim it a little bit more than I just did, and a little bit more. This is a romaine heart. So you can see the difference here. Essentially, you're taking the inside or the heart of the plant, you're trimming these extra leaves off, and for our romaine heart program, we typically put 3 of these in a bag, and the amount of bags we put in a carton depends on whatever customer we are packing it for. But this is the difference.
Great. Okay, just give everyone one last chance. If you have a question that you'd like answered, you can raise your hand or submit it on the question and answer. All right, well, thank you everyone for attending. I would say let's continue the conversation. If you go back into the Duda booth and click on the Meet with Our Sales Team tab, we will have lots of sales group sitting there waiting to talk to you. So please come back and let's continue talking. Thank you.